Welcome to another episode of Witty CFB. Your host here, Rob Sheply, and on today's episode, we're going to be discussing the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now, I'm sure as many of you guys know, the Arkansas Razorbacks are one of the teams that are definitely on the hot seat this year, particularly Sam Pittman. And, for those who don't know, I am a huge Sam Pittman guy. I love his energy, I love his personality, and, when, I kind of thought about a handful of seasons ago when Chad Morris was gone, it seemed like a natural fit for Sam Pittman to kind of get his first opportunity at a program like Arkansas, especially when you find out his prowess for, setting up offensive linemen and coaching them and everything. It kind of seems like a natural fit. Of course, there were some questions in terms of experience and all that, but, for anyone who hasn't watched the past 4 seasons, the one thing I will say, it's obvious that these guys are willing to play for him. And he brings that tenacity, he brings that energy, and at least for me, it's one coach and program that's definitely going to be on my radar this year. So it kind of got me asking, what do we need to see from Sam Pittman in order for them to get another year, and for also to kind of set the expectations and be able to kind of where's the bar at really? What should Arkansas fans really want to see out of their coach? Now, there's a handful of things, like obviously, for example, there is definitely a mass influx of transfers. The first thing that comes to mind is KJ Jefferson going to UCF, and then Taylen Green is transferring from North Carolina to Arkansas, which should be a huge opportunity for him, especially when he's been, sitting behind Drake May for all these seasons. And I think it kind of got to a point for him where he really needed the opportunity. And Greg McElroy even mentioned on his show that Taylen Green, I'm telling you, is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks, probably one of the most underrated moves we could see this season. And it is really nice to see him get an opportunity. And especially when you put in Bobby Petrino, we're really going to see some similarities to kind of, the first thing I think of is kind of Texas A&M's offense with Connor Wegman and the air spread and all that. So that's one thing that's definitely going to have to be more emphasized. Now, granted, Sam Pittman, his experience is in the offensive line, but him and Bobby just kind of have to mesh that together and figure it out. Now, there have been some concerns. I'm sure this could happen. Hypothetically, let's say if Arkansas, kind of starts off a little sour, I think a question that could easily come up is, to what extent does Bobby Petrino overshadow Sam Pittman? Now, I'm sure Bobby knows this too, but Bobby had to know taking over the program that it is Sam's program, but at the same time, I don't think it's completely unfathomable to think, hey, maybe in the back of his mind, what if I get another chance to, kind of ride the ship and kind of write his own redemption story. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole motorcycle thing. I'm just simply speculating it would be kind of a, coming of age, full circle sort of story where he has that initial success at Arkansas, the whole accident thing happens, that all kind of gets settled. He goes to Louisville for a little bit, coaches Lamar Jackson up. He ends up having a great career and a couple decent seasons at Louisville. Then he kind of falls off a little bit. Takes a couple offensive coordinator jobs. Then he goes to Missouri State and coaches there, and now all of a sudden he's back at Arkansas. So, all things considered, it will be pretty intriguing to kind of see how all of that turns out. But there's definitely some serious questions in terms of how's that offensive line going to mesh up? Is Taylen Green ready to take that step? And I think there's going to be definitely kind of a bit of a curve in terms of how fast can this team get going. The good news is, starting off their schedule, they play Arkansas Pine Bluff, which is pretty much a tune-up game for them. Now, the next game is they travel to Stillwater to go to Oklahoma State. Now, I'm telling you, for those people, I'm telling you, Oklahoma State is a sleeper for the Big 12 championship. So I think immediately they're already being tested that early into the season, and then you go to UAB after. So at the very least, they kind of have a solid sort of start, let's say. But the one thing that Arkansas is pretty consistent about is they always have to run the gauntlet. It seems like every year, they're playing the Ole Misses, they're playing the Alabamas, they're playing the Georgias, they're playing the Texas A&Ms, the Tennessees, and all that stuff too. And even looking back at it, I think to myself, I think about that Mississippi State game where they lost 7-3. I think about, being down by 21 to Auburn in the first quarter. There's a couple of those things that come to mind, and I guess what I'm kind of thinking in my head is, how's Arkansas going to pull? Arkansas going to need some upsets this year. They're maybe not upsets plural, but at least one of those upsets. Now I'm just going to run by real quick what their schedule is, just so we can all kind of get a quick glimpse into it. So I mentioned Pine Bluff, I mentioned Oklahoma State, mentioned UAB. Then they go to Auburn, they go to Texas A&M, they get Tennessee at home, which is not a completely impossible game, especially when people are all kind of speculating whether Josh Heupel, going into his fourth year, how much, is he legit or was that kind of a fluke season last year? Sidebar. In any event, so then you got LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas, Louisiana Tech, and Missouri. So, I'm just telling you, objectively speaking, that's not an easy schedule, because Ole Miss is going to be probably one of the top 10 teams in the country. You have Texas, who's easily going to be or is going to be in the playoff no matter what. Missouri, obviously they could be interesting too. So definitely not the most, compared to probably a little bit more generous than last year in terms of scheduling, but not by much though. That's the one thing that's pretty consistent about Arkansas, is they always kind of have a gauntlet of a schedule. Now, also digging before this episode, this is another stat that also kind of came to mind. In the last two seasons, Sam Pittman was 3-9 in games decided by one score. So, that's the one thing that even comes to mind when I think about a lot of close games. I think about the Florida game last year. I think about, not being able to beat a Power 5 team when they blew that 2-touchdown lead versus BYU. So there obviously are a couple moments where they do really kind of need that. He needs that signature win in order to really kind of validate himself into the conversation of, am I a legitimate SEC head coach? And another stat for you is Arkansas's last win versus a Power 5 team was home November 19th, 2022 versus Ole Miss. So, needless to say, there definitely is a lot of pressure. And, when it comes to my mind, when I see that schedule, I think the bar has to be 6 wins. I think what's the difference between Billy being on the hot seat versus Sam is, I don't think Sam Pittman's going to be able to get away with a 4-8, 5-7 season again and kind of do the same. He's playing, the kids are playing hard for him, et cetera, because there's going to be a ton of people in Fayetteville who are going to be chanting, what if, give Bobby another chance, especially if the offense is cooking and everything, but the offensive line is struggling, the defense is struggling. So there's definitely a lot to speculate, and the one thing that is consistent is Razorback Stadium is always popping. It's a pretty loyal fan base. It's an exciting fan base, and I'm definitely excited to watch them this year, because to me, that is definitely going to be just under the radar programs throughout, and in general, it's always fun to watch their games because they're always competitive. They have a tenacity about them that just makes you want to keep on watching, and it'll be great to watch throughout the season. So we'll see what happens.